I didn't leave my marriage because of one fight. I left because I finally understood the pattern and my role in it. He didn't hit me. He didn't cheat. He didn't raise his voice much. That's why it took me so long to leave. He was the kind of man people described as good, reliable, logical, calm, and every time I tried to explain why I was unhappy, he used those qualities like evidence against me. If I was emotional, he was reasonable. If I was hurt, he was confused. If I was angry, he was just trying to understand. And suddenly I was the problem. He had a way of turning every conflict into a courtroom where I was both the witness and the accused. He'd ask questions that sounded fair but were designed to exhaust me. Why are you reacting like this? Can you give me a concrete example? Don't you think you're projecting? By the time the conversation ended, I couldn't remember what I was upset about, only that I felt ashamed for bringing it up. I started doubting my own memory. If I remembered something differently than he did, he'd smile slightly and say, "That's not how it happened," not cruelly, calmly, like he was correcting a child. So I began keeping things to myself. Not because I didn't care, but because caring costs too much. He loved efficiency, solutions, closure. I wanted acknowledgement, repair, accountability. He called that dwelling. There was one argument where I told him I felt unseen in our marriage. He sighed, leaned back, and said, "I can't keep apologizing for not being enough for you." That sentence stayed with me. Because I wasn't asking him to be more, I was asking him to show up, but he experienced my needs as criticism, my pain as an attack, my tears as manipulation. So I learned to present my feelings like a PowerPoint, concise, calm, sanitized. And when that still didn't work, I learned silence. I became easier to live with and harder to recognize. Here's the part people don't like hearing. I helped build that version of myself. I negotiated my boundaries away one conversation at a time. I chose peace over truth. I told myself this was what commitment looked like. Until one night we were sitting on opposite ends of the couch, and I realized something devastating. He wasn't curious about me anymore, and I was afraid of him, not physically, but emotionally, afraid of being misunderstood. Afraid of being dismissed, afraid of becoming hysterical just to be heard. I told him I felt lonely with him. He rolled his eyes, not dramatically, just enough, and said, "I don't know what you want from me." That was the moment it clicked. He didn't want to know what I needed because knowing would require change. The last conversation wasn't explosive. I said, "I feel like I'm disappearing in this marriage." He said, "You're overthinking this." And just like that, my entire inner life was reduced to a flaw. I packed my bags that night, not because I was confident, but because staying meant continuing to betray myself and calling it love. When I told him I was leaving, he said, "You're throwing everything away." What he meant was, "You're no longer manageable." I didn't leave because I hated him. I left because I finally saw how power works when it's quiet, because love without empathy is control, because peace without honesty is captivity, because a marriage where only one person gets to define reality is not a partnership, it is a slow erasure. And I chose to exist, even if it meant walking away shaking. Thanks for watching.